Google has appointed itself the internet sheriff against fake news, adding to a long list of jobs like controlling your life in every way. Google says it's valiantly guarding the innocent and ignorant masses from lies that would lead them astray, lead them to do things like vote for Donald Trump. That's the idea anyway. They're still working on it. There's some bugs in the system. Earlier this week, the New York Times reported that fake news stories have persistently popped up as, believe it or not, Google-driven ads on fact-checking websites. An ad on PolitiFact said that Melania Trump was leaving the White House. Snopes had an ad for a bogus story saying Joanna Gaines was leaving her HGTV show. Whoa! Perhaps dividing fact from fiction isn't Google's strong suit after all. Well, it's well established at this point that the left believes every single person on earth has the moral right to enter this country, legally or not. But the most avant-garde liberals are finding a new right for illegal aliens, the right to have an abortion at taxpayer expense. Kristen Hawkins is president for Students for Life of America. She wrote a piece about this phenomenon for The Federalist, and she joins us tonight. Kristen, thanks for going on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
So this is one of those stories, it's kind of hard to believe it's true, but you fill in the blanks. Liberals are arguing that U.S. taxpayers somehow have an obligation to fund abortions for illegal aliens. True?
That's right. This young girl entered our country illegally. She's from Central America. She informed the government once she was apprehended that she was pregnant and that she wanted to have an abortion. Not surprisingly, the ACLU seized this opportunity along with their abortion allies to mandate that taxpayers facilitate her abortion. And this is it's a shocking case because it shows you just how far the ACLU, their friends at Planned Parenthood, and the abortion industry want to take their extremist abortion agenda. They want to use this girl. And what they're trying to do is use her as sort of a Jane Roe 2.0 to internationalize Roe versus Wade. And they're declaring that she has a constitutional right to have a taxpayer-funded abortion, which the last time I checked, the Constitution only applies to Americans.
Well, I don't think it directly addresses whether or not we have an obligation to pay for the abortions for legal aliens. I mean, it almost seems like, I mean, the left loves abortion. They think it's the key to freedom and personal liberation, as you know. But it almost seems like it's not really about abortion. It's the ACLU and affiliated groups seeing how high they can raise the middle finger in the face of middle America and say, you know what, we hate you, we despise your values, and we're going to do exactly what we want to make you pay for it, whether you like it or not.
That's right. And this is something that goes against the majority of Americans with their wishes. Majority of Americans are against taxpayer-funded abortions. And now they're just doing this again. And, you know, what they actually tried to use this girl's case to add onto their additional lawsuit that they're already trying to stop Catholic Charities, which is one of the largest charities in our country, from receiving federal grants to help refugees and immigrants. So this is just their anti-life, their anti-faith agenda coming out in full force. And that's what we're seeing. And that's why, really, it's so important that we have President Trump there in D.C. We have a pro-life administration, a pro-life HHS, because they're the ones trying to protect this young girl from the ACLU, from Planned Parenthood, who are just simply using her as Jane Roe 2.0.
Boy, I mean, you wouldn't even, I mean, I am pro-life, but you wouldn't have to be in order to find this appalling. The idea that, I mean, so if some federal judge decides, in fact, the Constitution's been hiding this obligation for 225 years, would this mean that U.S. taxpayers have an obligation to fund the abortion of like anybody from around the world who comes here for one?
That's right. And this is setting up dangerous precedents. What this is going to do is going to tell any young, scared girl in Central America or anywhere else in the world, come to the United States illegally or legally, and we'll fund a taxpayer-funded abortion for you. This is some dangerous stuff, especially when you consider this young girl coming from Central America who made that dangerous, life-threatening journey to cross our borders. And this is the signal we're going to be sending out across the world.
Yeah. See, this is why Trump's going to win again. Because no matter how flawed he is, normal people look at the alternative and say, you know what? You scare me because you're nuts, actually, and you're haters.
That's right. They're extremists.
Now, that's for sure. Kristen, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The disappearing Las Vegas guard is back. Jesus Campos appeared on the Ellen DeGeneres show today. But the real questions about Las Vegas remain unanswered. It's actually gotten weirder. You didn't think it was possible, but it has. We'll fill you in after the break. Well, Mandalay Bay security guard Jesus Campos, who is one of the only direct eyewitnesses to the shooting indoors, in that hotel in Vegas from over 2 weeks ago, was scheduled to appear on Hannity last Thursday, but he abruptly backed out without telling anybody and disappeared. Well, today, Campos resurfaced. He made an appearance on the Ellen DeGeneres show. Here's part of it.
You just want this to be over. So you're talking about it now, and then you're not going to talk about it again. And I don't blame you, because why relive this over and over again? But it's helpful for people to understand what a hero you are, because you, being shot in the leg, saved so many people's lives. So we just wanted to celebrate you. That's why you're here today, because we want to thank you for what you've done.
Huh? How exactly does that work? And is that really an interview? Well, it turns out it could actually be a bizarre case of cross-marketing by MGM Resorts that owns Mandalay Bay, sponsors, by the way, the Ellen DeGeneres show, and features Ellen-themed slot machines in many casinos, including Mandalay Bay. Huh. Maybe that's why he did the interview. Meanwhile, MGM reached out to us after a report came out suggesting that Jesus Campos was using someone else's Social Security number. The MGM company claims they verified his employment eligibility back in 2015, and it was his Social Security card. Mark Stein is an author and columnist, and he joins us tonight. So, Mark, look, I'm not a conspiracy nut at all, and I'm desperately hoping the authorities will prevent me from forming my own conspiracies to explain what is becoming increasingly inexplicable. But it looks like that interview you just saw, and I'm putting air quotes around the word interview, was managed by MGM, and that's why they put him on Ellen's show. Does that give you confidence that the public, which has a right to understand what happened, is learning anything meaningful about this story?
No, and I'm not a conspiracy nut either, but you're entitled to be one on this, Tucker, because whether by intention or design, nothing is proceeding normally in this case, up to the absurdity where someone says, I'm only going to give one interview and I'm going to give it to Ellen DeGeneres. And Ellen,
Exactly.
and I've got nothing against Ellen.
I don't either.
But it seems very a weird choice. And as you say, she manages to say, well, you are a true hero because by getting shot in the leg, you saved so many lives. That's not what happened. That was the old narrative.
Exactly.
The old narrative was that he interrupted the gunfire, took a shot in the leg, and brought the massacre to a halt. And then the sheriff said, oh, no, sorry, is that what I said? No, absolutely sorry, I got things the wrong way round. Actually, Mr. Campos got there before the mass shooting started, and then apparently the shooter took, between shooting Mr. Campos in the leg, there was then a 6-minute delay before he started massacring everybody, during which time he had a nice cup of tea or called down to room service or whatever he did, and then the hotel said, no, that's not what happened. There's a third timeline, and then everybody does the obvious and says, well, why don't we ask Mr. Campos what happened? And then they say suddenly, oh no, he's disappeared. He's gone now. He's off the scene. No one's seen him for a week. And then he comes back and he's on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And that's how conspiracy theories start. And everybody is entitled to take a flyer on whatever conspiracy theory they want in this case, because for whatever reason, officialdom and Mandalay Bay and the Ellen DeGeneres show have muddied the waters to total impenetrability now.
Well, that's exactly, I think it's so nicely put, because it's clear. And by the way, simply because MGM managed this interview doesn't mean that it's inaccurate or that, I'm not attacking MGM, but I also think it was managed. Clearly it was managed. Right. And so and they're under a ton of legal pressure because the usual ambulance chasers are circling the hotel looking for payouts. And so that suggests that, he's under a lot of pressure to give a specific storyline that may not be that useful in understanding what actually happened.
Well, but there's other issues here, Tucker, because Las Vegas is one of the most surveilled cities on Earth.
Yes.
Because all these big casino resort owners want to know what people are doing in the building from every conceivable angle. So even before we got the big panopticon post 9/11 security state, in Vegas, they had cameras everywhere linked to some back office where everybody's looking at what you're doing. And what's interesting to me is that if, say, there's some terrorist thing that goes on in London or Paris or Brussels or wherever, within a couple of... Take the Brussels airport bombing is a very good thing. These guys pull some stunt at the Brussels airport, kill a bunch of people. Within 24 hours, you've got the closed-circuit television picture showing the killer moving through the airport concourse. Here, Mandalay Bay has not released any footage, any shots of this guy. The couple of pictures, even of the hotel room door, are actually extremely limited. If 200 rounds did indeed come through this door, that must be the best built hotel room door in the history of hotel rooms.
That's exactly right.
And so, obviously, I might be wrong. There might be an explanation for that. The bullet, he might not have been a very good shot, so he was actually firing through the cheap sheetrock to the side of the door. I don't know. But the fact is that Mandalay Bay has not done what Brussels Airport did in that terrorist attack.
No,
and so
it's
nobody
totally
actually
right.
knows what this guy was doing.
There's dishonesty in here somewhere. I don't know what it adds up to. Quickly, just to prove I'm not a conspiracy nut, I want to ask you what the JFK assassination. So it was 54 years ago next month, a long time ago, and we're about to get, as released by law, the final tranche of papers from the investigation into the murder. The CIA is apparently arguing those papers should be held for another 25 years, which would bring the total up to almost 80 years that they're under wrap from public view.
Right.
What could be the justification for that?
No, and again, you're entitled to be a conspiracy nut on this one, too, and it makes you wonder when Donald Trump, in one of his more inventive moves, placed Ted Cruz's father on the grassy knoll that day in the late stages of the presidential primary campaign, makes you wonder, well, it seemed a little crazy at the time, but now you look at the fact that they're trying to sit on this stuff for another... You know, as I think we all know, Ted Cruz was born in Alberta. Was his father operating?
I'm going to have to stop you there.
Operating on the instructions of the Canadian government? Have we got some Canadian deep sleeper operation going on here?
That was my personal favorite moment. Whole campaign. We're out of time. Unfortunately, more conspiracy. Thank you, Mark. That was great.
Thanks a lot, Tucker.
Up next, we'll wrap up with a discourse on fitness from CNN's poet laureate, Chris Cuomo. Stay tuned.